Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious, to kick off another week of staying curious. And boy, what a big day in space history this is. Two Gemini space flights were launched a year apart, very important missions. Some that went well, one that went very well, the other not so well, but still kept us ahead of the Russians on the big moon race in 1960. And the Gemini missions were in 1965 and 66. And this is the Spacewalk of Ed White right here by our ASM partner and good sponsor friend, Chris Calley. Yes, that's artwork. That's not a photograph of the great Spacewalk by Ed White in the beautiful violet border of our atmosphere there. And and we're happy that we saw Chris over the weekend. Not going to talk about anything about the Astronaut Hall of Fame. Going to do that tomorrow. We got a big program today with two Gemini space flights that we always want to cover here because this is an important part of the American Space Museum's heritage and history is our Spaceview Park. Just 3 blocks from where I'm sitting here with Marty Winkle, my co-producer. In our downtown Titusville Museum, our Spaceview Park has over 30 astronaut handprints in bronze, and the astronauts of this mission are included too. So we always want to keep people reminding, we're clicking off a lot of time in years, okay? 1965 being 59 years ago, hard to believe. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, a lot about that today, and some other news real quick. And then tomorrow we'll talk about the Hall of Fame. And I've got a special guest coming up for Thursday and maybe one on Friday. So hello to Marty Winkle, my co-producer. We've done well over 1,050 episodes of Stay Curious, born out of the pandemic, so we could stay in touch with our nonprofit donators, people that keep us alive with their donations, and we hope that you join that group. As on our Facebook page, we have ways to take your money and at different levels, and we're going to be kicking off a campaign here in a day or two that hopefully we can raise some money that we need for our nonprofit. Every nonprofit's out there struggling in this inflationary times. Our bills have gone up at least 25% just this first quarter alone. And that means our utilities, our toilet paper, our paper products, things like that. So you are responding, and we hope that you continue to do so. And we'll talk more about that at future times and look at our Facebook page there. But we do want to update everybody that our wonderful Director Karan Conklin is in stable condition. She has had a medical emergency and was hospitalized last week, and we are praying for her. Karan on the left there talking to Julie Payette, Canadian astronaut at the Astronaut Encounter. And Karen's been involved with this museum 25 years, first as a volunteer, and the last 7 as the executive director. I talked to her husband Mark about an hour ago, and she's stable, hoping to be moved out of ICU into a regular room this evening. And you local people, I'll let you know what that room is so you can go out and give her some well-deserved love. But she needs to be convalescing and getting her strength back with the issues that she's facing. And so keep Karan Conklin, our executive director, in your thoughts and prayers. And Thursday, we're going to have Bert Dick, the National Space Society Managing Director of Memberships there. Open mic with Bert. He's going to talk about the International Space Development Conference that was in Los Angeles a weekend ago. And we know that Doug Forrest, an artist and also graphic industry designer, he's in the industry of graphics in Hollywood there. Hello to you, Doug, and send me a few pictures by Thursday of what you did there. I understand that you're the International Artists Association was also out there. So Bert's going to talk a lot about the National Space Society, the Ad Astra magazine that Rod Pyle so amiably is the editor of, and how you can get involved in space, as well as join the National Space Society and the American Space Museum at the same time. So we're going to talk about that with Bert on Thursday. And I wanted to usually try to do Mondays as we're going to try to brand Monday as Backyard Astronomy Monday, but because so much going on in space history today, and we have to keep close to the museum here with Karen's situation, I didn't take the day off to record that. So here is a great skymaps.com. And here's the sky for the month of June. Directly overhead is Hercules. It looks like SpongeBob SquarePants. I'll feature that on a Backyard Astronomy maybe next week. But what's important to know is there were no planets to see this morning. Okay, this rare alignment of the planets that I'm showing you here happens all the time. I don't know where people are going crazy about that, because Jupiter and Uranus would never be visible with the naked eye that close to the sun. And Jupiter and Mercury, or maybe if you could see them, it'd be for about 30 minutes. Definitely the Moon, Mars, and Saturn are up in the morning sky. And as we segue, as the 6 months from now, as this Earth is on the other side of the solar system in our orbit, we'll be having all these planets in our night sky parading across. And come to our museum and I'll show you Saturn's rings, though they're disappearing. They're becoming edge on, a phenomenon that happens every 15 or so years. The Mars, Jupiter's moons. Mars is kind of far away, but we can see the disk of it. So the fall's when we're going to have a lot of parade of planets, and that happens all the time, folks. So don't get too excited about it. But what we're going to be seeing beginning this weekend will be the crescent moon appear in our sky. New moon is on the 6th, 3 days from now. And then it will begin its climb into the evening sky. And by the weekend, you'll be seeing the beautiful crescent up there. But it's a great time with the moon out of the way to go see the faint fuzzies, learn the galaxies, nebula, double stars, that sort of thing. In that blue band there, that's the Milky Way. And the Milky Way, when it right now, is along the horizon when the sun sets. So there, we're going backwards. Looking forward to Bert. Boeing Starliner 1052, Marty said. 1052 Wednesday. And you wonder about those scorch marks on there. Yeah, this is a reflown spacecraft. This is Calypso that did an uncrewed flight to the International Space Station about a year and a half ago. And everything was pretty nominal with that, and it landed out at the desert. Not sure what desert. I think it was the Utah desert. And Thursday morning, you're going to want to get up early and watch about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock Eastern time, the launch of the fourth launch of Starship. And there it is out at Boca Chica on the coast of Texas. So another big week ahead. But did you catch the news over the weekend that China has landed their Chang'e 6 lander on the backside of the moon? This is an artist's rendering of it. There is the actual frame of it just moments before it touched down. You see the blast of the lunar regolith being blown away by the landing engine there, reminiscent to the Apollo landings that we've documented many times. So this is a big deal. And because it is right now, they think in a 48-hour period, it landed Saturday or Sunday morning. And at the top, that is a spacecraft in itself that's going to be launched off the platform after that white arm here scoops up maybe 4 pounds of lunar rocks and soil. There's supposed to be a little rover on this, so I haven't seen any new pictures today, but keep up with China on the back side of the moon. They've even got 2 satellites on the back that can relay uninterrupted the imagery and data back to Earth. That's why you could see on our Facebook page the landing as it happened. And communist Red China was good to show that to the world just a few hours after it happened. Yes, Marty, question or comment?
Comment from Steve Jokum. He said the CST-100 landed at White Sands.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Landon at White Sands. By the way, Steve, we got your box today, and I'll give you a call after the show today. Got a little busy, carried away with work. To call Steve Jokums up there at the Lake County Spaceport off the shores of Lake Michigan. Become a great friend of our museum. Thank you for your support and all you're doing, Steve. Just one of the many out there. So there's the landing. Very incredible. We can't wait to see it. Landed at the south pole of the moon. Okay, landed near the where the lunar south pole in a crater called Apollo, which is in a big plain, big circular impact area called the Aitken Basin. And why there? Because at the South Pole, there's not much light. Sunlight never hits some of the deep craters, and any water put there by comets is undoubtedly still there, and we might be able to mine it for fuel and living water and things like that. So we're at a moon race with China, folks, and no one even talks about it. Artemis and the Russians or China's going. Russia was in the plans with China, but because of the invasion of Ukraine, China's backed off of Russia as a partner, and because they ain't got money. It's not politics; it's probably the money involved there, Marty. All right, so we're going to talk about Gemini. Okay, Gemini, and some of you say Gemini, and people ask me, why do I say Gemini? And here's why. NASA clears up the correct way to pronounce. I need to read that, Marty. All right. NASA clears up the correct way to pronounce Gemini, okay? And here is the official word on that. Regardless of what the dictionary says, the Federal Space Agency's official pronunciation for its new manned in space program, Gemini, is Gemini, as in Jiminy Cricket. Now, you all want to know who Jiminy Cricket is, you under 40 years old, okay? Marty, oh, Jiminy Cricket was such a great part of our lives every Sunday night before Ed Sullivan was the Disney's Wide World of, and they had science and all kinds of stuff on there. Gemini is the zodiacal constellation known as the twins, okay? But Gemini is a little cricket that was in Pinocchio. And Jiminy Cricket always said, always let your conscience be your guide. And the great story of Pinocchio and his good friend Jiminy Cricket, not Gemini, the twins. By the way, Castor and Pollux, the heads here in this, are in the western sky. As the sun sets and gets dark, you'll notice two stars side by side, separated by about 5 degrees. Your fist could go between them. Those are Castor and Pollux, the twins. And Jiminy Cricket always sang, when you wish upon a star. Makes no difference who you are, your dreams can come true. So you see a meteor streaking across the sky, a shooting star, wish upon it there. So now you know it's officially Gemini. That's why I'm saying Gemini and not Gemini, because NASA in 1965 cleared it up and said that's how we want you to pronounce it. Well, here's our Gemini Memorial out at Spaceview Park. Many of you have walked down what I consider this hollow ground of our space program. The pavers in the middle have some of the missions chronologically, and on the right-hand side are astronauts' handprints in pylons that are shaped like the Roman numeral 2 for the brothers Gemini, and then the big stainless steel Gemini monument moniker back there, thanks to the Sandmeyer business in Pittsburgh that donated that way back. Of course, the mission we're celebrating today is Gemini 4 on this twofer in 1965 and Gemini 9 in 1966. Gemini 4 was launched on June 3rd, 65. And the coincidence of it exactly a year later has a lot of fate involved, including a fatality. We'll talk about that. That is, of course, Ed White on the left and Jim McDivitt. Ed White passed away in the Apollo 1 fire, of course, and Jim McDivitt just died about a year ago, and age 93, I believe he was, and he really gave it away. No, actually, Jim McDivitt, yeah, he was 93, and So they're there in their Gemini spacesuits. What I like pointing out is the head didn't swivel. It wasn't, when they sat down, their chins were beneath the bridge of the bottom of the helmet, and their eyes were looking out. Their noses were just down there. Here's one of those pavers that celebrate today's date in history. I've walked down these many times. So have you, Marty. And you look down June 3rd, 1965. All right. They even abbreviated June there. Instead of putting June, they put a period there, Marty. You see all these little idiosyncrasies at monuments and so forth around the world. And there's one of ours. They abbreviated June with a period there. I guess they didn't have room for that E there, but they did for a period. Very cool outlay here. This is part of the U.S. Spacewalk of Fame, our nonprofit foundation, where we're always reminding you that we need your money. Well, there's Dee O'Hara, the famous nurse of the astronauts, with Ed White and Jim McDivitt. Many of you do not know, or if you do know, you might not remember that Ed White was an identical twin. In fact, I talked to a space worker that was at his funeral at the West Point, I believe is where he's buried. And they saw his twin brother walking down the aisle, and they were like, started to flip out. They're like, what? You know, and then somebody told him, you know, that he had an identical twin, and I don't know what his name was, or I forget if I knew it. But Dee O'Hara is still around to tell the tales. She's in her late 80s, and she was the nurse that promised never to tell anything, the private stories about these astronauts, and she never has. She participates in a lot of things. She's not a recluse, but she's never wrote a tell-all book, and I've never been around her, Marty. Have you?
No.
They ought to bring her out here for a book signing or a signing of something. Here's some of the things carried. There's the food that was taken to space, and the water. This is very revolutionary. The first time they'd done this, a water spigot in a kind of a garden hose type of spring-loaded handle, and your food there is rehydrated. There's the scissors to snip it. It looks like surgical style scissors. And I'm not sure what the two pills are there for. And this is the camera that they took with the famous jetpack hand control that Ed White tried to maneuver around. It was kind of naive for them to think that this would move exactly the way they wanted to. It didn't. For every action, there's a reaction in the opposite direction. But Ed White took some of the pictures he took on this. Apparently had to wind the film. I believe it's a Nicormat camera, if I'm not mistaken. Someone will correct me on that if I'm wrong, I'm sure. And he had a tethered line to his hand so that he could let it go. All right. And that, of course, is depicted here in the right-hand corner of Chris Callie's beautiful painting. And here's the pre-launch breakfast with the priest, and I believe when Nick Thomas talked about this last year, I think that's one of his priests there that he knew there. So don't see Gino there. I mean Slayton. So anyway, I forget who's heads to the back of us there, but they had a traditional breakfast.
That looks like Shepard.
Yeah, it could be Shepard there, although his hair is pretty thin. There is Shepard with the crew cut and getting suited up in a trailer. Okay, they had a makeshift trailer near there where they put their suits on. That was their white room there. And I'm sure that's the famous, who is the white room? One of the pioneers, Jack. I'm trying to think of his name. Not a good memory day here today. And there they are up in the white room with Gunter Vent, the pad leader there, maybe saying a few moments of their inner thoughts there before they get in the spacecraft. And there they are standing out there with their, Ed White's got in his hand some sort of manual or something, instructions in there. And there's the blast off with all this. You forget what a Titan rocket looks like. We had these buried in silos all across the fruited plain with nuclear warheads on them. And they were smart as a nuclear deterrent because they had hypergolic fuels, meaning one fuel touched the other and that ignited. And I forget the names, tetrametro something and another something, but that's why you got this distinct orangish cloud. That is from hypergolics. Marty, can you add anything about that? But very clean, smooth burning. Everybody said this was like riding a sports car compared to those that rode the Saturn V like Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan did. Yes, Marty, you were reaching there.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of the name of the fuels, and I can't think of it.
Yeah,
But I'm older than you, so I'm allowed to forget.
Yes, touche, my friend. We're both allowed to forget because I didn't write it down. And there's, of course, 100, 200 years from now, this picture will be seen, and it has been stylized in so many ways. There's the hand control jetpack to move him around. I say pack because you don't have to put it's not on his back, but jet gun, I guess, is the proper terminology there. And he is connected. He doesn't have on his back.
If you want to talk
Oh, there we go. Marty brought it up. He doesn't have any. His air is coming from the hose. For those of you who don't realize that, his communication and air is coming from the hose. He must be venting out carbon dioxide somewhere, Marty, because there's no scrubbing of his lithium containers or anything like that attached to him. Hypergolic fuels, Marty looked it up, hydrazine, monomethylhydrazine, and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine, and the oxidizer is nitrogen tetroxide. So, yeah, nitrogen tetroxide and monomethylhydrazine is the other fuel in there. So thank you, Marty. And so, 1965, I was a teenager. This was the headlines of the world. This was the second spacewalk ever. Alexei Leonov, the Russian, had beat us in March, just a few months, and he stayed outside for 12 minutes, and it almost cost him his life because he couldn't get back in. His spacesuit ballooned out. They had a little tunnel instead of just opening the hatch like we didn't go out, which exposed Jim McDivitt to the environments of space too also. So he was technically a spacewalker, though he didn't get outside the capsule, but they shut off everything inside. So he was exposed to the environments of space. Same thing's going to happen when Jared Isaacman does a first private spacewalk, hopefully this summer, with his private company, Polaris. Oh, I can never think of that. Polaris Dawn, and he has already done a private SpaceX Crew Dragon mission, the St. Jude's, with 3 other people, including Cyan Proctor, who's been right here in our studio to talk to us about it. We love her to death. So spacewalks have become kind of commonplace, where now we're looking at the first private citizen to go outside space, and then a woman's going to follow him or go up there and do that. Incredible. But this was the first American spacewalk. Iconic, like you can never believe. These images forever etched in our mind of Ed White doing this spacewalk. Well, China, on their Tiangong space station, had the longest spacewalk, over 8 hours, with 2 of their Takonauts last week. 8.5 hours, a record for Chinese. All right. They installed a space debris protection device on Tiangong after it was hit by a micrometeorite, and it cut off some of the equipment, some of the power. It actually hit a power cable and compromised it and shorted it out. So they're putting blankets to save that stuff. So how many people, Marty, human beings, have done spacewalks since Alexei Leonov and Ed White did number 1 and 2? Just a guess.
Gosh, I'll say 62.
Oh, no. Several hundred.
Oh.
We're several hundred now. The two Chinese were the 261st and 262nd humans to walk in space. All right, now that's 617 humans have orbited, and about a third of them have done a spacewalk. Okay, over a third, you could say, have done, because a third would be 200 something, 262, and we've met a couple of them. I look at them sometimes and just like Nicole Stott, I just look at Nikki and go, wow, you were out there. John Harrington talked a lot about it in a recorded conversation we're going to air soon. But we've met Mark Lee, we've met Steve Smith, and a lot of them. And when you really think about it, Marty, you're like, wow, you did that. Go ahead.
But Mark, is that the number of spacewalk or the number of individuals? 'Cause some people-
Individuals.
Okay.
According to Wikipedia, a list of individuals on Wikipedia. There have been over 270 spacewalks on the space station, times 2 people. Okay. So, yeah, it's a high number. It's a high number, but of the 617, 262 have done spacewalks. This shows you how essential they are to maintaining a space station. And why I gripe about on any of these Star Wars, Star Trek. I'm binging Babylon 5 right now. I never see anybody go out and do a spacewalk to repair the ammonia lines or replace an antenna or batteries or something like that. And I never see anybody in weightlessness either. But that's science fiction. This is science fact. And what a seminal day this was. Brought the into the nomenclature of the world, the word spacewalk. Okay, extravehicular activity, EVA. EVA and spacewalk now became part of our pop culture, all right? And so this all happened 59 years ago today. And the wives of the astronauts, McDivitt and Ed White's wife and their children were watching, and that's Chris Kraft with them there in Houston as they were walking in space and doing this. So that was kind of neat that they had the families there listening to the broadcast that we weren't listening to when you were watching Walter Cronkite. And then here's the recovery, just to show everybody that they recovered in the ocean. Look how tiny that spacecraft is. A frogman's on it on there. One of the astronauts has gotten out already. There's McDivitt with the beard. How long was that mission? For him to grow a beard like that quick, Marty? I think it was 4 days. Of course, I can't see the data. Yeah, 4 days. Yeah, a little over 4-day mission there. So, and that's them on the recovery ship there. And there's Chris's beautiful thing there. Now, a couple things that they used. This image of Ed White in space became the first iconic double stamp in America, done by Paul Callie. Chris, the artist that we're featuring behind us here, his father did this image and was ready for release in June 1965 when it cost 5 cents. And then Mr. Paul Callie in 1969 released the famous first step on the moon stamp of Apollo 11, and they'd gone up to 8 cents. Now, I'm not sure what it costs. I think it's 55 cents to mail a letter today. But there's another iconic piece of artwork in the first double stamp that came out of this. Now, not only is it Gemini, like Gemini Cricket, but it was Roman numerals is how NASA did the numbering of the Titan Gemini space launches. So here's the iconic Gemini 9. It's going to dock with an Agena rocket that didn't happen, and there's a spacewalk of Gene Cernan that almost cost him his life. Who lost their lives were Elliot C. and Charles Bassett. Unfortunately, were killed as their jet crashed into the McDonald building where their spacecrafts were being built in St. Louis, Missouri. It was a bad rainy day, and they should have waved off like Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan in the other T-38 behind them did, but Elliot C., this is the prime crew, and they clipped the building in bad weather and were killed. And a very sad moment when this happened. But for the first time, the backup crew became the prime crew. And there's Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan. And Tom Stafford died about 6 weeks ago, about 2 months ago, something like that, at age 93. Gino lived a long life. He's probably been gone about 4 or 5 years now. And what else was it? So that became 9A because the crew had changed. So to designate a different crew, they called it 9A. Now you'll see the 9, numeric 9 for the missions a lot, but it's officially Roman numerals. So, and Gene Cernan was supposed to get behind the Gemini spacecraft and put on this backpack that he was going to be tethered and try to fly around like Buck Rogers on a backpack. A very, very ambitious spacewalk. They didn't even have handholds on the spacecraft for him to go around. They thought that he could just kind of grab the shingles, so to speak, around it. But it turned into a disaster. Here they are before the launch up in the White Room. Now, Stafford had flown 6 months before on Gemini. What did he fly? Gemini 6. Gemini. He flew with Gemini 7 with Schirra. Yeah, Gemini 7 with Wally Schirra. And they did the first rendezvous with Gemini 6 that was up in space. So this is the quickest that any astronaut returned to space was 6 months, as he was the backup. And he had several aborts on both missions. GT 6, of course, had the famous engine started and stopped, and that's why it was delayed, so that Gemini 7 was launched first, and then Gemini 6 went up there for one day and buzzed around them, and very historic mission again. Here they are coming out of the trailer that was the White Room. How crude is that? All right, they got little footies, yellow booties on over their boots. And here is Tom coming up to the White Room, and he's got a gigantic matchstick there, okay? I think this is going to be his 5th attempt to launch off the pad. Or there was like 3 attempts on 1, on 6, and 2 on GT9. So he said, let's light this candle, but also can represent a scepter because his nickname became the mayor of Pad 19, as that was the pad that they were launched from. And he spent so much time there. And astronauts joke about stuff like you can't believe, and Marty knows that. So they tease him he was the mayor of the launch pad because he spent so much time there. All right, and look at Gino in the back. He's got special on his look how darker his legs are. Okay, that's because he had an ablative spacesuit covering there from the jet backpack, so it wouldn't burn him up in space. I'm kind of glad that didn't work out, because I don't know if that would have worked out too well. As it was, he overheated trying to get to the back of the Gemini service module, and we'll talk about that in a second. There they are inside the spacecraft. Look how cramped it is. It's like a jet fighter, or 2 cockpits of a jet fighter put together there. This is now out at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, and I didn't load up a picture of it, but it's not that well restored compared to other Geminis I've seen. And there is the GT launch, all right, of the monomethyl hydrogen and the other catalyst there. Pretty cool to see that go up off there. Pad 19, very famous. Behind my head is the control room there. That was basically, these were bunkers like they built. So, never heard anybody talk about the noise of that. All right, and maybe I'll have to ask Hazel Banks. Hey, Hayes, I know you're watching, and good seeing you today. One of our ACE volunteers that was a secretary to the astronauts, starting with Gemini 8. And when they went up there, they were going to have the augmented docking collar, all right, because their rocket had blown up. Their Atlas Agena rocket had blown up before it got to space, so they had this together, and by golly, the shroud had not come off of it, the fairing, and so they couldn't dock with it. They thought about trying to get out there with Gino and cut the cable and all that stuff. But it was clearly a space worker error why this happened. And though we've talked about it a time or two, I don't think anyone was disciplined on it, Marty. But, that's why you see all these red tags all over things, removed for launch and all that sort of stuff. So something was miscommunicated on that kept the retaining ring around it. And then on the space, a few great pictures taken out the window, but just very few of Gene in space. This is one of them. Again, the rope is his lifeline with air communications inside that cable. And he overheated trying to get to the back, overexerted himself. His respiratory rate was very high. His heart rate went over 170 beats a minute. He was really sweating, faceplate fogged over, and Tom Stafford had to pull him back in, like on the cable, to get him back in and get him settled down. There's another picture that Gino took. All right, from you see the cable going over here to the left. Pretty cool picture, but he was not feeling and he was going to go to the back there behind the white and put that jet backpack on. But they didn't have handholds and stuff back there. Don't know how they thought it out after Ed White said it was very difficult. Okay, the Gemini 8 spacewalk was canceled because of the emergency landing that Neil Armstrong had to do when the thruster stuck, and Dave Scott was going to do a big EVA to check things out, and didn't get a chance to. So the spacewalks didn't go really well till Gemini 12 when Buzz Aldrin practiced in a water tank like a scuba diver and had handholds and a real set way to do it, though. Dick Gordon did a spacewalk on Gemini 11 and Mike Collins on Gemini 10. When they docked and rode over to that, they kind of got straddled that Gina rocket like cowboys on there. So one thing that I wanted to mention about Gene that I read, Marty, and if you read a lot of books, you see any histories you can interject. He had, when he got down to Earth, let's show him down to Earth. There they are, waving, happy to be alive there, okay, in space. Gene said that his feet were full up to his knees of water from where he sweated it out. Where's the water going to go when you sweat? It goes down to your boots, okay? And his feet were sloshing around in the sweat that poured off of him. And it said it went up almost to his knee, the feeling of water swishing around there. Yuck. All right, so, but they were safe. They were up there 3 days, okay? The spacewalk happened, I think, the first day, and then he calmed down. So you had to imagine what day did that go? I'm trying to look real quick. Anyway, they practiced docking with that, and this was the third day that they did it. Yeah, that was the EVA. They call it successful, but one objective, the maneuvering unit, wasn't achieved, and his fog. But this is really glossed over. Cernan talks many times that Deke Slayton pulled him over before launch and said, if Gene gets in trouble out there, you may have to cut him loose and leave him. Okay, was a real possibility. I don't think even if the astronaut had died out there, they would not have brought his body back. No, but they had some contingency plans. So anyway, thank you for letting me relive one of my space heroes, four of my space heroes, and these wonderful missions of Gemini 4 and Gemini 9. Steve Jokums is watching, Carlton Bailey, Larry Pusker, Robert Law, Tom Usiak, Cliff Watson in Pomona, Australia. Thank you all. I got too busy, didn't even post it on Facebook, so we went a little bit late on there. And again, we're doing what we can around here. A lot of us doing some extra duty now because Karan, our leader's in hospital, but she's doing stable condition. This is a beautiful monument out there at Spaceview Park. Let's see, right there you can see the VAB. right there off in the distance on the horizon of one of my favorite photos I've taken of the monuments on a beautiful day around here. The handprints, there's Tom Stafford's and how mine stack up to his out there. Quite a deal that we got all these astronauts. Charlie Mars, our godfather, was the one that got most of them. There's your paver, Stafford Cernan, June 3rd, 1966. I see they didn't abbreviate June on that one, Marty. That spelled it out. But what a beautiful park, and the county takes care of it, the city patrols it, and we pretty much have solved the vagrant problem. There's a beautiful 3-condo complex, 3 10-story condos are just to the north of this. There's Gino's handprints. Okay, so it looks like some birds have left their business there on his other hand. That's why I'm using it there. They signed their name and their mission. And then Jim McDivitt's also at Gemini Park, but this is what it looks like in Spaceview Park. See, all the Apollo astronauts, their hands are in 2 places out there. And one guy, of course, who'd be the one guy that's in all 3, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo handprints out there. And of course, that's Wally Schirra. And the names up there are people who gave us $100 and worked for the companies there. Walter Murphy was a NASA man. Larry Ellis was NASA. Who am I looking there? Tommy Arendt was Rockwell, LA division. And Marty's out there, proudly part of the Grumman Corps. So, and because these were started in 1999 to 2000, 2001, these hands were harvested. We did not, of course, get Ed White, but Sandy Storm did a beautiful rendering of him. She's responsible for all the bronze statues and reliefs out there, and that's a pretty good likeness of the late Ed White, who will forever go down in the history annals as being the first American to go to space in there. And there's Karan with Julie Payette again, so please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you all for staying curious with me today. And tomorrow we will talk about the Astronaut Hall of Fame. Marty, I expect you to have some memories of it. You did a couple different things than I did. Very up and down because the Astronaut Hall of Fame induction was going on at 11 o'clock. They pushed it back to 10:30 because of the Starliner launch that was, of course, aborted and scrubbed till Wednesday. And we're going to be looking forward to that at 10:52. All right, out there. Remember back in the day, we would go crazy to bring those to you live. All right. We went up to Marty's condo with our equipment and all that stuff. We'll get back into that one day, okay? But right now we don't want to move our equipment that we have because we're afraid something may happen to it. But we'll start doing that for you. Something popped in my head about that. So, well, thank you all for watching today. Again, Bert Dick. Let me put Bert up there. We got Karan up there. We're looking forward to having Bert in the building on Thursday. National Space Society. He has been involved with them for a long time. All you space geeks that travel to the shows and conferences and stuff know Bert real well. So if you got a good question for Bert, shoot it at him Thursday. He'll be here at 4 p.m. live on Stay Curious. So, until next time, I'm Mark Marquette saying, I hope to see you in our building or see you watching Stay Curious. Why? Because we want to bridge the space between us. Thank you so much.